turn my headphones up.
Welcome back to Masters of the Nerdiverse. I am here to welcome you to my podcast where we always have such sights to show you. I am your host, Mike G, and you can always find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, SoundCloud, and now even YouTube, ladies and gentlemen. We're crossing all borders. We're going into that final frontier, and hopefully you'll be along for the ride. I'm extremely excited for this week. So much to go over, so much to talk about, and I'm happy to be able to go over all this with you. And just to get jumping right into it, just to get started, let's go over my week. There we go. Smooth and steady. Wins the race 95% of the time. Let's keep it moving. My week was pretty good. It was a very uneventful week until this weekend, where all news seems to shatter and implode within itself. So I was very kind of nervous about my weekend take and what I was going to be able to get into. But the weekend really just saved me in regards to having content to go over on this podcast. So going over my week, I played a bit more of Injustice 2 on PS4. I was able to pick up the new downloadable character Sub-Zero. Sub-Zero, Chinese Ninja Warrior. His heart's so cold. It's way too cold. For those who know, Sub-Zero is a staple of the Mortal Kombat series, a fighting game made by NetherRealm Studios, and the game is amazing. And so is this new character. Sub-Zero is very different from the rest of the cast because he's very, I would say, not projectile heavy, but he's very keep away heavy in a game that really wants to push offense and push projectile spamming, as it were. And if you don't know, that term spamming is where you're constantly sending out a particular launcher. So if someone in Street Fighter terms was continuing to shoot tiger punches with Sagat, that would be more of an example of what spamming is. Whereas Sub-Zero is kind of built to punish that. His costume design is extremely interesting. They gave him a cape, which in Mortal Kombat characters with capes are never really that cool looking, but somehow it kind of plays in this new environment that Injustice is given to him. I like this character a lot better than I liked Scorpion in the first Injustice game. I like his design more, I like his approach more, and of course the game just looks gorgeous. So this is the best Sub-Zero's ever looked in his 20-year stint as a fighting game staple. So I'm really excited to play with him some more. I went through his multiverse, earned some good gear. I was able to get a hold of that Bihan Noob Sabat skin, where it's like his suit just all black before they took it down. So I was one of those lucky few to be able to get a hold of that. He has different color palettes that you can change for him, because in Injustice 2 you can actually change the look of the character to almost anything. It's very, very, very diverse on the options you have for changing up characters. So with Sub-Zero, you can make him look like Rain, you can make him look like Scorpion if you like, Sector, even Reptile. It's very, very, very fun to kind of play with, dig in deep with that character and really get an understanding of how he works and how he works against the other cast. So he's going to be my main for a while, because Sub-Zero is always my main in Mortal Kombat games. It's like when you're a kid and you have to make that choice, right? It's like, do you choose Ryu or Ken, Mario or Luigi? I would say Ginger or Marianne, Sub-Zero or Scorpion. I'm a Sub-Zero guy through and through. Since the Genesis days, I've been a Sub-Zero guy. That's not changing anytime soon. So I was able to get some matches in with that, having a ton of fun with it. I've been playing it almost every other day, learning the character a bit more. So happy to keep going with that. In the video game circuit, that's really all I've been doing. I haven't really picked up Tekken 7 yet, even though I'm really excited to jump into that once I can able to purchase the game and get into the meat and potatoes of that. There aren't any adventure games that are really on my radar right now, except for Super Hot, but I'll get into that of what I'm looking forward to towards the end of this podcast. Now, in regards to the movies I've seen a couple of good ones. Over the weekend, I finally came to see Sicario, the movie with Benicio del Toro, Emily Blunt, and one of my favorite actors from Burn Notice, Jeffrey Donovan. Movies like this, where if you don't know what Sicario is about, it's pretty much a film that delves into the struggle and the give and take with the drug trade from the U.S. into Mexico, into Colombia, and all that extremely horrible things that are going on with that. And it kind of gives you a bird's eye view into that life. That particular subject is very fascinating to me. I've watched all of Narcos, learning about the rise and fall of Pablo Escobar, and this subject always kind of twings me because it's so real, but it just seems so above and beyond life. It just seems like people are living it every day, and I'm here tucked in California watching a creative interpretation of someone's life. It's very behind the veil for me. And this movie, it's very dark, it's very atmospheric, it's very real, and it has this fantastical moments. It's an action movie, it kind of has to, but they really tend to dig deep and grind it up when it needs to be grinded up, and kind of give you, like I said, that fly on the wall view of how this really goes down. And it's just a very good movie. It's very well done, very well directed, very well acted. Everybody killed it. Benicio del Toro, I can see why they're going to give him his own sequel for this film called, I believe it's Soldado. So I really want to see that and check that out. And I would recommend it if you're into action and if you're into kind of semi-realistic interpretations of actual fact. Check out Sicario. It's very good. I believe I watched it on Amazon Prime. So if you're a Prime member, it's for free. So just check it out. Take 2 or 3 hours out of your life. Watch this movie. You will not regret it. And if you like it, email me. Let me know what you think, and we can have a discussion. Speaking of having a discussion, there was a movie I watched this weekend where it's probably best not to have a discussion because you may find yourself murdered. I finally was able to watch the horror film Don't Breathe. And I call it a horror film because it's actually that, but it's covered in a veil of a suspense film. And for those who don't know what this is about, I'm not going to spoil anything. It's just about a bunch of punk burglars that burgle the wrong house, and the owner happens to be blind, and wackiness ensues from there. It's a crazy movie because it plays with the audience. Horror tropes because we live in the real world and horror is in fact fiction, but it plays with certain tropes that you take advantage of going into a horror film. And the way they portray the villain, but he's not really the villain, just given the circumstances of the film. There is no hero or villain in this movie. It's really your alliances sway as the movie progresses. And you find yourself rooting for the villain, and then you find yourself really not rooting for the villain, and then you find yourself sympathizing with the victims, but then you don't find yourself sympathizing with the victims. It's really give and take with this film, and it was very fun to watch. And it was what I needed at the moment. It was a nice, not turn your brain off, but more turn your brain on. And I love movies like that where it makes you sit up and pay attention to what's going on. And Don't Breathe is a good example of that. And I would recommend it. So I would definitely focus in on that and pay attention, because there's little things you can miss if you're not really watching it. And speaking of needing to pay attention, I need to scream this from the rafters. I'm going to say it real nice and close to the mic. Go on YouTube, log in, get yourself a soda, some chips, maybe some kale chips if you're of the healthy persuasion, and type into YouTube, type into the search engine, Oats Studios. I'm going to say it again, Oats Studios. Just type it in. You're going to find a channel with some shorts, and I recommend you watch them all because they're the best thing I've seen all year. Hands down. You may say to yourself, Mike G, what's Oats Studios? It sounds kind of silly. Well, Oats Studios is a creation of a acclaimed director, Neil Blomkamp. He's directed such films as Elysium, District 9, and he was up to direct the latest Alien film, but that didn't work out for him. And it's a very fascinating story of a director who was ready to do his thing, and his dream project was kind of taken away from him. And him and his team and everyone was all set to go, ready to rock and roll with their idea for Alien, but that all fell through. So he decided to go on and create these movie level shorts. They're roughly about 20 to 25 minutes long, maybe 30 minutes long. And everything from the production value to the actors, to the story, to the effects, to the atmosphere, to the sound, it's all extremely on point. I mean, I was watching this over the weekend and it freaked me out. It legit freaked me out. Like some of these shorts were freaking me out. And just to kind of give you an idea of what they're called, I'm not going to go into too much detail because I think you should be surprised. But one is called Firebase, Zygote, Raka, and God of the Serengeti. These are the 4 shorts that are out right now. I sat there and watched these with my mom, who was a horror geek like me and can appreciate a good science fiction horror. And all of these are kind of within the realm of science fiction and atmospheric horror. And my mother, during one of them, just said, I would see this in the movies. And I looked at her and said, right, these are absolutely amazing. So I recommend, I'm not going to say anything more about them because they're best seen than explained, like The Matrix. And they're on YouTube, so it's free. So go on YouTube, type in the words Oats Studios, look at the channel, like, comment, subscribe. Please give this studio your love. Give Neil your love, because I don't know how they're getting paid for all this stuff. And it seems like multi-million-dollar projects for each one. Just the production value is that nuts. And just go watch them. And I'm curious to see what you think, because no one's really talking about them. And that's really bugging me out. Like, I had to hunt for reviews for these things, because after I watched them, I had to know what other people thought. And I went on Reddit and I searched YouTube and the internet for other reactions, and there were not a lot. So I'm like, more people need to show this thing love, because it is the best filmmaking I've seen all year, flat out. In these small shorts. Absolutely amazing. Positively great. Good show. So do it. Go do it now. Or after you listen to this podcast. Wink, wink. Speaking of good show, also this weekend was EVO 2017, or Evolution 2017. And for those who don't know what that is, Evolution 2017 is the Super Bowl of fighting game tournaments. All fighting games from Street Fighter V to Skullgirls to Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Everyone from around the world comes to Las Vegas, and they enter this huge fighting game tournament where tens of thousands of participants play fighting games, and the winner gets a huge amount of money and the accolade of being the best fighting game in their respective game. And I watched this over the weekend, bits and pieces. I watched the Injustice 2 tournament, which was super cool. A Aquaman main won, which I thought was very fascinating. And the entire show was amazing. You can catch it on YouTube. I think you can catch clips. I watched it via Twitch, so chances are if you have a Twitch subscription or not, you can just go in there and watch it for free. But if you just really love fighting games and love seeing competition and the drama of competition and seeing announcers kind of go over and really teach you the game as you're watching it. And honestly, I, as a master of the Nerdiverse, I've loved fighting games my entire life. I'm going to tell you right now. I remember playing Street Fighter 2 on the Super Nintendo with my father and sitting on the floor and him bodying me every single time with Chun-Li doing grab loops, and my little child brain couldn't wrap around how to get out of that. And I was such a sore loser as a kid. I was such a sore loser. But it made me really appreciate fighting games and appreciate how to lose and appreciate characters and appreciate design and appreciate just the entire genre. So I've been a fighting game fan ever since I was a little kid. So seeing like-minded individuals gather in one place and play their hearts out and really get into it, and you can really see the detail of each individual style. It was great. EVO was great. I definitely recommend watching tournaments if you're into fighting games or and you don't really know how these things work or know the next level of fighting games, I recommend that you watch clips from Evolution 2017. And all through the year, there are competitions like this. This just happens to be the biggest one. There's a show called Wednesday Night Fights, which you can find on YouTube. You just type that in. You'll be able to find it. There's Capcom Cup, where people go and play Street Fighter V and participate and win and lose and all that great stuff. So definitely recommend that. Had a great time watching Evo this weekend. And the people who won Takedo, he's this great Akuma player. And I love Akuma. He's one of my favorite characters. And he just played out of his mind. I saw the moment where something clicked in his brain and he was just on the next level. It's like the moment in The Matrix when Neo wakes up. He just starts blocking Agent Smith's attacks with one arm and he's just staring off into the distance. That's what Takedo did this weekend versus his opponent Punk, who was a Karen player. Amazing show. Absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. Now, that was pretty much my week. I watched a few things. I viewed a few things. I played Injustice 2 and really just prepare for the podcast. Prepare to give you the best possible show I can. And speaking of shows, it's time to go into the news. Welcome back. I'm here with my hot cocoa. Got something to sip on. Have a rice cake covered in chili cheese. It defeats the purpose, but that's okay. I'm ready to go into the news. Like I said earlier in the podcast, the news was very bottom heavy this week. Everything came at the end. It was all this weekend because between Evo and which I just was talking about, the fighting game tournament, a lot of news came from that. And also over this weekend was D23. And that was the Disney Expo where they go over all of their efforts from their video games to their films to their TV shows. And they give you a big breakdown of what's coming up. And it was so much news that I'm going to actually separate it from news and give it its own segment. So this is Disney Talk with Mike G from Naval Cosmos. That is actually my art blog, navalcosmos.wordpress.com. Please give it love. Go show it to your friends and say, this guy can draw, or he has drawings. Go check it out. But I digress. D23 was very, 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 very long and very interesting. So I'm just going to go through each bit of news and I'm going to comment and kind of give my thoughts on them. So let's get right into that. Starting with the first scene for Incredibles 2 was announced, going back into the powers of Jack Jack. Incredibles was actually one of my favorite movies from Pixar, besides Toy Story, the original Toy Story. And for them to do a sequel, I feel a certain way about it because Pixar films, in my opinion, shouldn't have sequels. They should be their own isolated stories, and they should tell a story and move on to the next idea. But I understand that these things make a lot of money, and people want a continuation of the story. So them having a sequel to Incredibles seems fine, but I am reserved to see if they ruin it, because to me, The Incredibles is a damn near perfect film. And I hate the idea of a sequel kind of adding on to that lore and wrecking it. But I'm going to leave it to Disney and Pixar in their capable hands to put out a good product. And hopefully it adds rather than degrades a very good and solid, I would say, part of the Disney family. And speaking of family, the Avengers Infinity War was highly, highly focused on at D23. A lot of events, a lot of things that were actually Avengers Infinity War related were shown at the exposition. So they went over and showed like a 5-minute trailer for Infinity War that only certain people could see. I've heard of a couple of things that went on during this trailer, and I'm not going to talk about them here because I'm all for maintaining spoilers. And plus, I didn't see it, so I don't want to speak on something I haven't seen. But from what I hear, it sounds pretty crazy. It sounds super, super, super crazy. And either this is going to be the most epic film of all time and we're all just going to ascend after this is done because there's nowhere else to go from here, or it's going to be the biggest letdown of all time. A 22 movie arc build up to a 2-hour movie. I have no idea how they're going to do that. Or a 4-hour movie rather, because they're going to break it up in 2 parts. But we'll have to see. From what I saw, what I heard rather, It seems pretty insane. And going back to family, they actually showed off Thanos, the main villain, the big villain that they've been hyping up ever since Avengers 1. They showed off his Black Order, or the children of Thanos is what he's calling them. And if you've read the Jonathan Hickman run, you would know that Thanos runs with these super sick cosmic beings. I know a couple of them off the top of my head. Black Dwarf, I think one's called, I don't want to butcher any of them. Black Dwarf's the one that's just coming to mind right now, so we're going to stick with him. And they're just a bunch of really badass, super cosmic beings that are apparently the children of Thanos, and that's who the Avengers are going to fight until they fight the big bad. It's like a video game. You got to beat all the mini bosses before you get to Geese Howard. Speaking of Geese Howard, we'll get to him later. Super hype. In other news, Kingdom Hearts 3 was actually shown off with trailer gameplay and a really in-depth look into the game. And for those who don't know, Kingdom Hearts is an amalgamation of Square Enix characters and Disney characters. So think a cross between Final Fantasy and Disney properties. So Kingdom Hearts has a very long and very convoluted history that I'm not going to go into on this podcast. Just know that Kingdom Hearts 3 is a video game that people have been waiting for almost a decade now, company included. And what they've really showed off was that they're including a Toy Story world in the Kingdom Hearts universe. So how it works is Sora, the main character, would travel from land to land to defeat the Heartless, which are the main antagonists of the game, and pretty much reach his goal. So each land he would go into a different Disneyland. So it would be a Winnie the Pooh land, and a Little Mermaid land, and a Lion King land, and a Pirates of the Caribbean land. So now they're adding a Toy Story land, and it looks very good. It looks next gen. I just really hope the score is good, because what I love the most about Kingdom Hearts games are the score and the music and the arrangement and all that good stuff. And I really just want it to sound good. That's my biggest thing. Gameplay is always going to be crisp, hopefully, knock on all the wood. The storyline I don't really care about, because it's a Kingdom Hearts game, and the storyline of Kingdom Hearts is more tangled in a bag of snakes, so I'm not really even trying to worry about that. I just want there to be a killer track that makes me fall in love with the game again. So I really am looking forward to that and see what more comes from that. And going back into Infinity War, there was, of course, the big show out on stage where they had every single major actor on stage all together at the same time for the first time. So everyone from Guardians of the Galaxy to the Avengers proper, to Spider-Man, and so on and so forth, and to Doctor Strange and all the other side, and the Black Panther. And moments like that makes you, as a comic book fan, just kind of geek out and just cry tears of joy a little bit, because it's something when you're a kid, depending how old you are, you thought that was never going to happen. You know, I grew up in an age where 1989 Batman seemed impossible. It seemed like, this is crazy. And to think you would live in a time where Spider-Man's swinging around and Iron Man is shooting unibeams from his chest just seems so far-fetched. But here we are. We're in an age where graphics and storytelling have reached a point where this is possible. So I am extremely excited, and seeing a scene like that just makes me happy and well up. It makes me a little kid again, and just takes me back to a place where the impossible seems possible. And going into the impossible seeming possible, other news is that they showed off some of their live action ventures, because Disney has been in this mood where they have wanted to create live action versions of their old school Disney animation properties, such as Beauty and the Beast was the most recent one that came out, Cinderella. So they have actually a few of them that are ready to go, such as Lion King, Dumbo, Aladdin, Aladdin's my favorite Disney movie of all time, so I'm hoping they don't butcher that, and Mary Poppins. And I saw some stills from a couple of them, and they all look pretty good. And we'll see. There hasn't been a live action version of a Disney animated adventure that I've liked personally, and Aladdin is the one I'm really going to hold out hope for, because that's my favorite Disney movie of all time. So fingers and toes crossed on that one. During the presentation, they also went into Star Wars The Last Jedi, went into some of the behind the scenes featurettes, went into some of the creature creations, character development, things like that. I steer clear of that because I don't want to be spoiled on a movie that's coming out at the end of the year, which is Star Wars The Last Jedi. I'm super okay not knowing as much as possible about this film, and I don't want to be spoiled on any accidental, I would say, plot drops. Disney's usually very good about not divulging any information unless it's absolutely necessary, but still I want to steer clear away from this stuff as much as possible. So I just kind of know that they exist, and that's fine with me. That's as much as I want to talk. I want to learn about it, rather. And speaking of learn to put on a VR headset, because Marvel VR game has been announced on the Oculus Rift at D23. And for those who don't know what the Oculus Rift is, it sounds like some sick engine that powers a gateway to hell. But no, it's actually just a VR headset that you put on and you see the world in glorious virtual reality. It's like we're back in the 90s again. And Marvel announced a VR game where you can be a Marvel hero and whatever. VR is still in a very early state where it's very gimmicky. It's not really about storytelling or world building. It's just about, hey, I'm Batman and I can swing on a bat rope, or I'm Spider-Man and I can shoot a web shooter out of my hand even though it's not there. So something I felt like needed to be mentioned. It's something that's happening within Disney and something that I just wanted to kind of go over. And lastly, on all of my D23 news that I wanted to talk about, let's see. And the chief creative officer was just kind of going over the history of Pixar and the future of Pixar with the releases of Toy Story 4 and a film called Coco that I don't know a lot about. I just wanted to mention this because, like I said, to me, Pixar films are best as kind of self-contained stories rather than Toy Story 4. You know what I mean? Like, Toy Story is fine just ending at 1 in my humble opinion. And for them to continue to make sequels on top of sequels, but because, you know, money talks, and these sequels are okay. They make a lot of money, but to me, I like the isolated stories, and that's how I feel about that. Wow, that was a lot of Disney news in one chunk. D23 Ultra rocked it. Now we can continue on with the rest of the news that happened over the weekend. So what I would like to go into is a few things that I would like to talk about in regards to the world of the Nerdiverse, as it were. That crazy Nerdiverse with this giant heathen god that looks like a panda with a raccoon face and holds a scepter. If you haven't seen it yet, you're not that deep into the Nerdiverse. Catch up, get on my level. In sad news, I really wanted to talk about this, is we've recently lost the originator of modern zombie films, George A. Romero. He passed away at 77. Lived a very good, long life. And I wanted to comment and just pay respects to the gentleman who always wanted to upset the apple cart. I was very fascinated in horror cinema growing up because I was a horror head, thanks for my loving mother. And zombie movies always fascinated me because it was kind of like, we are the enemy. You know, we're the villain, we're the creature. And it really boils down to how social standings can erode given the biggest fall in social order. And that's where George Romero really was coming from. And being a horror head, I watched a lot of documentaries and a lot of commentaries featuring George A. Romero, and just hearing the guy talk. And he had such a spark of life about when he would talk about these things. And he seemed just a kooky old guy. He just seemed really fun. And he just was really talking about how the night that he created, you know, the original Night of the Living Dead, you know, it was the night that Martin Luther King got shot. And it was a very interesting allegory to what he wanted to talk about, which was, you know, what does it take to shake up the social norm that could possibly be affecting our culture in a negative way? What does it take to spar a revolution? And does it take us literally eating each other to spar that revolution? And he was such a visionary. and he seemed like such a salt of the earth kind of guy. He's going to be missed, especially from this horror head. And I just want to pay him his respects and give him his time on my little old podcast. So moving on to something a bit more revolutionary and something a bit more something a bit as revolutionary and as impactful, I would say, is that we have been given finally a female doctor. And you may say, well, there's tons of female doctors in the world, but I'm talking to my Who fans out there. The new Doctor Who this time around is a lady, and it's going to be played by Joan Whittaker, I believe, is going to be the actual new Doctor Who. And I believe that is awesome. And for those who are not familiar with how Doctor Who works, Doctor Who's a show that's been on since the 70s. It's a very long running, huge show in the United Kingdom and in England and all across the world. There's Who fans all across the world. And there's always been different men. There's always been different older gentlemen, younger gentlemen, different kinds of doctors, because one of the hooks of the show is that the doctor changes his appearance after a while. It kind of helps the creators of the show always shake up the show. And now we're finally given a female doctor, which I think it's cool. It's all about representation. A little girl can now, or an older woman for that matter, can now, look at this character and somehow reflect themselves within that character. And I think that's important for all race, creeds, and colors to be able to latch on a certain level and connect with the character, because it's all about connecting, ladies and gentlemen. And it's all about having representation. It's extremely important, especially in the pop culture and nerdiverse that we live in. You want to be able to see yourself in a character. You want to be able to see yourself in a particular show or a TV show or a video game and feel accepted and feel that you can connect with this character on a deeper level. So I wanted to bring that up on my show, and I would love to see what this new Doctor Who can do. Bars. You guys aren't ready for my flow game. Speaking of bars or being barred, during D23, they recently asked Mark Ruffalo, the current actor playing Bruce Banner, the Incredible Hulk, what are the chances of a standalone Hulk movie? To which Mark Ruffalo replied, not a chance in hell. And they asked him, well, why? Why is it like that? And he stated that, well, Universal and Marvel don't really play well together. And it's another one of those things where Marvel doesn't full out own the rights to Hulk because it was sold. So they have to play well with the competition to make a decent film. So I can see his place in that. I can see how he would say it so bluntly, because it's probably a question he's asked every time he goes outside. So after a while, those nerves tend to tighten. You just say what you really feel. Not a chance in hell. And that's sad, because I think the Hulk in the Marvel movies has been pretty well done. Not given a lot to do, but pretty well done. And hopefully that will change in the future. Now, speaking of the future, I'm going to go into the future of animated film, where we are going to talk about how the Wreck-It Ralph sequel is in the works. And I love Wreck-It Ralph, and the original film had M. Bison in it. How am I not going to like that movie? And the big thing that they wanted to mention is that all the Disney princesses from all the older Disney films are going to be in the movie. I think that's super cool. Why not have all the Disney princesses in your film and have that be something that people can watch and really, I would say, latch on to. So I'm all for that. And I'm interested to see how it goes, because I love I love the first Wreck-It Ralph. And I wonder where they go from it. Are they going to go more into the current atmosphere of video games? Because the original Wreck-It Ralph rather, kind of went into the atmosphere of old school video games in regards to like Atari, Nintendo, and new school video games at the time, which were more like the Call of Duties and Gears of War. And they mixed those two together to make a commentary on, video games in general and the people who play them. So I'm interested to see where they go from there. Speaking of playing video games, Marvel Infinite, the game I've been actually talking about since I started this podcast, has introduced 2 new characters over the course of the weekend during Evolution 2017. One is Gamora for the Marvel side, which is a Guardians of the Galaxy character, which seems fine. Why not, right? But the one that really is piquing my interest is they've added Jeddah. And you're like, who is that? Who is Jeddah? Or Jediah, or however you want to pronounce it. Well, he is a Darkstalkers character from the fighting game Darkstalkers made by Capcom. And this is a character who hasn't seen the light of day since, the early 90s, late 90s, early 2000s. And he's appearing in a tentpole series. That's amazing. I like to see diversity in games like this. It actually gives me a slice of hope for this game, because as of last week, I was not going to buy this game at all. And as I mentioned, I always buy Capcom versus games, and they're like my favorite fighting games to play. So, will I main Jeddah? It depends on how he feels versus my play style, but we'll see. It's a glimmer of hope for a game that I was actually losing hope for. And to go into a game that I have plenty of hope for, Dragon Ball Z Fighters with a Z did a Trunks reveal trailer over this weekend as well during EVO 2017. And of course, like everything else with this game, it looks absolutely phenomenal. They really pay attention to character ticks and manga pages and animations, and they put it all into this game. And Trunks looks as best as he's ever looked. I'm so hyped to play this fighting game. And it's not a big revelation. You know, everyone knew that Trunks would get into the game. You know, it's like Frieza's going to get into the game. He's already in the game. I mean, there's certain characters. Piccolo has to be in the game somewhere. So, but to see it in this new light, and to see it in this new, I would say, cover of paint, it looks extremely well. I'm so hyped for this game. I wish I could play it now. I just want to play it. It looks so good. Speaking of games that I want to play, Tekken 7 over this weekend, and I literally freaked out. I literally squeaked like a small child when I found out that Tekken 7's DLC character for this winter is going to be none other than King of Fighters' own Geese Howard. Geese. I'm so hyped. He's my favorite fighting game player of all time. He's up there with like Blanca and Lei Wulong. Like, Geese Howard in King of Fighters is one of my favorite characters of all time. He's just so cool. He does parries. He does air fireballs. He does sweeping kicks. He does sick throws. Everything he says is cool. His look is cool. I wasn't going to buy Tekken 7 because my favorite character, Lei Wulong, is not in the series yet, or in the game yet. And I was holding out because I was like, okay, my boy Lei has to be shown at some point. And the moment they announced Geese, I was done. I was like, what am I not going to play Geese Howard in Tekken 7 and learn how to play him? So, dude, it has to happen. It's going down, basement. So Geese Howard was announced to be coming out this winter, and that's when I'll be buying the game. Simple as that. I may buy it a bit earlier, just so I can learn the mechanics and get comfortable with it, which I'm planning to do. So I just want to get ready for Geese because that's just too real. I just can't get over that. It's unreal that they will put this character in this fighting game. Now, these games don't really mix like that if you're familiar with how fighting games work. It takes a lot to get a license for a character in another game. So the count now is that Namco, which is a separate thing, now has a Street Fighter character in Akuma, which is B. And now they have a SNK character, which is Geese, which is C. So that's A, B, and C mixing up into 1, 2, 3. Together it's you and me. Let's get some games going. It looks great. They showed a trailer over the weekend during Evolution 2017. Looks absolutely amazing. So I'm ready to jump in that game and get my feet wet. And speaking of things that are coming soon, and this is really just news for me, honestly, because something I want to talk about is that they're doing a 4K HD renovation or remastering of Rawhead Rex. It's one of my favorite horror films of all time. It's extremely hard to find copies of it on Amazon. Go for like $80 or $100. They just haven't done anything with it. I'm not going to say anything further. Is that if you have a minute and you want to go on YouTube, watch Rawhead Rex. You may love it, you may hate it, but it's one of my favorite horror films of all time, and it just holds a special little place in my creepy heart. So let's get it. It comes out in October around Halloween trust to believe Masters of the Nerdiverse is going to do a full review of the Blu-ray, and I'm going to have a horror movie watching party at my house. It's going to be sick. We're going to have like little raw head kebabs. I don't know how I'm going to make that work, but it's going to work just fine. Speaking of things working, over the course of Evolution 2017, they announced a new video game from one of the fighting game makers, Iraqi. And this story needs a little backdrop, so I'm going to start from the beginning. There was a time in Street Fighter history, there was this games called Street Fighter EX. And this is Street Fighter's first foray into 3D. And when Street Fighter first started, it was all 2D fighters. So pretty much it was all sprites and 2D views. But there was a time where Street Fighter was made by a different company. And this company added in their own characters, adding on top of the Street Fighter characters, and put it into the realm of 3 dimensions. And there is a small contingent of people who love these games because these unique characters were only seen at a certain time in history. And these are characters like Darren Mister and Skullomania, who's personally my favorite of the batch. And the reason I bring this up is because the original maker of those fighting games has come back to make a whole new fighting game called Fighting Lair, I believe. And it only exclusively shows these old characters that people have been wanting to play again for years. And from what I can see, it looks absolutely amazing. So I'm very excited to see more from that and to actually hopefully get my hands on it, because I'm kind of interested to see the evolution of these characters over so many years. Mind you, these games did not come out until, I would say, 1999, 1998. Very old games that haven't been seen since. So I'm very interested to see how those go. And speaking of seeing how things go, Street Fighter V announced its next character to be a final fight crossover. Character's named Abigail. With a name like Abigail, you may think, oh, it's a girl fighter and she probably does super sick kicks. You know, she probably does fire cat kicks and they come in disguise. No, for those who are Final Fight fans, Abigail is a almost 20 feet tall giant beast man who's extremely buffed out, and he looks like a giant grappler. He's about 3 times the size of anybody else on the screen and just looks wacky. I don't know how to feel about that. I wanted to talk about it because it's something that happened over the weekend, and this is a character that's not going to bring me back to Street Fighter V. It just looks too crazy, and it just looks out of control. And sometimes you need that to shake up the apple cart. But to me, meh. You know, it's a giant, big meh. Like, if you visualize what I look like, and you probably don't know what I look like, picture a human going meh and the word meh coming out their mouth. That's exactly how I feel about this news. And speaking of meh news, Marvel's Comics is putting out the Weapon H, which is the mix of Hulk and a Wolverine hybrid in their latest string of comics. And talk about beating a horse till it's passed away and it's in the glue truck, you know, providing glue to small children in elementary schools. Jeez Louise. It's like, you have good characters, and I get it. These characters have been written for almost 50, 60 years now. Hulk has been written for almost 50 years. Wolverine about 40, 50 years, right? But I hate when they just mix characters and justify it in a book. It just bothers me. I don't know. Sometimes it works. Sometimes peanut butter and jelly works. But this just seems weird. It's this giant grayish Hulk with animating bone protrusions coming out of him. He almost looks like Doomsday from DC Comics. So I don't know if I'm gonna read it, but I will check it out. I mean, on some level, I will check it out and see how things are going with that. And that concludes the news for the week. Wow, that was a lot. That was a mouthful. My mouth is all dry, all super dry and stuff. I need a delicious beverage, like a sparkling water. This is the part of the podcast where I will go into questions and answers. I haven't received any questions yet, and I hope to receive them soon. So I'm going to tell you where you can send those questions. You may be saying, Mike G, you know, I started this new space program where they're injecting some kind of weird formula into my arm. Now I'm strong as an ox and I can run unaided in space. But I'm sorry, I need to know where I can send my questions to. And you can send those questions to mastersofthenerdiversecast@gmail.com. You can say, Mike, I'm in space. There's no sound. In space, no one can hear you scream. Where do I send these emails to? And I will repeat, I will sign to you that you can send them to mastersofthenerdiversecast@gmail.com. Send me questions. I can't wait to answer them. I'm an open book. Just send me your questions. I will answer them in which the order they are received. Thank you. I will buy you a fruit basket. I will not. Now, I've reached a place in my podcast where I'm going to do my closing thoughts and my closing things that I'm going to be doing and looking forward to in this next coming week. Closing thoughts, very good weekend. It's a very good weekend for me. A lot of things to go over, a lot of things to talk about. And I'm excited to see what this new week brings. For things that I'm excited for, I'm really excited to go see Dunkirk. It's a film directed by Christopher Nolan. It's a war film based on the Battle of Dunkirk. That's about as much as I know about it. And from the trailers, it looks good. I love a good war film when I can watch one. I'm happy to kind of give you guys my thoughts on that next week. Also, I'm interested in purchasing Super Hot on the PlayStation Network. Super Hot. Super. Sorry. You have to do that when you say Super Hot. It's a shooting game where you can freeze time. Look, it has a very good graphic style. Check it out. It shouldn't be that expensive. I think it's probably be about $10, $15. I'm going to pick it up, something to play. Really looking forward to playing that. I'm actually on the verge of getting a co-host. I'm narrowing it down to a couple of people, and we'll have to see how it goes and see if we can collaborate so this can stop being a one-man show. Even though I love just having your full attention, it's always good to bounce ideas off of someone, so I'm looking further into that. I'm looking forward to doing more artwork, and actually I have to do artwork for the YouTube channel because I had my artwork all planned out, but this weekend happened. It made me completely change the way I wanted to do the cover for this week's Masters of the Universe show on YouTube. So I'm going to be drawing that right after I'm done with this editing and putting up this podcast and having that out for you for our YouTube visitors and our YouTube channel followers. Please like, comment, and subscribe on my YouTube channel. And I'm looking to get back into Final Fantasy XIV. I played it for a very long time, leveled a lot. My main class was Black Mage. I was a level 60. I did not complete Stormblood. No, that's the latest one. I didn't complete Heaven's Ward. I need to go back and complete Heaven's Ward and pick up Stormblood. I'm thinking about doing that this weekend. If I do it, I'll let you know. If I don't, I'm probably smarter for it. Getting into MMORPGs can steal your soul. So really thinking about doing that. As always, I'm your host, Mike G. Please follow me on Twitter, which is @mnerdiverse. That is @MN and then the rest of the word Nerdiverse. Follow me on Twitter. I post my entire life on there. You'll be able to peek into my life in a small peephole and kind of see what goes on with Mike G. And as always, I am happy to bring you the news, happy to bring you my life, and I always encourage you to go that one step beyond.
Turn my headphones up. 1, 2, 1, 2.